Fantastic.
Yeah, yeah, I'm excited. I love that you don't do any kind of editing.
Ready? All right, start. Okay, welcome to 42, Two Souls, One Journey, a raw and unedited look into our lives as humans, based on the 21 grams experiment by Dr. Duncan MacDougall, who concluded that the human soul weighs 21 grams. On this video cast, we explore that no matter what our lives look like on paper, our souls journey similarly. In this episode, we're speaking with a fellow podcaster, a creator of solution-based programming. He's a bilingual psychotherapist who works within the LGBT community in Toronto. He's thoughtful, he's honest, sincere, one of the few men who's connected to his feelings and not afraid to tell you about them. I've had a chance to see him flex his professional muscles on a podcast with my roommate, where they talk sexuality, relationships, personal wellness, and trauma. Bonjour, Vincent. How are you?
Hi, I'm really good. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. I feel like I haven't had Raheem on yet, but it's nice. I feel like I have access to him so great, but it's nice to sort of have a psychotherapist across to sort of talk about some of the things that I've been through in my journey and what's happening in our community right now, and give us some professional solutions or some professional tools or answers to sort of help us navigate. Not solutions we have to figure out, like.
Everyone's life is going to be fixed in 41 minutes now.
Yeah, I don't want to promise that. It's all just extra tools in our box for when we need them, so we can talk about them. So the very first question that comes to mind, like you work with a very specific target group in Toronto. What? How did you get here? What got you to this position?
So I knew when I was a kid growing up that I would be, at the time, I didn't know the difference between psychologists and psychotherapists. And if you have 7 days, I can try and explain to you the difference between the two. But ultimately, I knew I wanted to work with people. And then in Quebec, when it was time to go to Cégep, I was in my last year of high school, and I freaked out, and I was like, I can't become a psychologist. I'm too scared. So I did that huge detour where I studied graphic design for 4 years. And then, yeah, I did it. Like, I don't regret it. It was really fun.
Right.
But yeah, I did this huge detour, ended up, my roommate and I at the time wanted to go study sexology at UQAM. So we both, me and her, moved to Montreal together and then started this sexology program to which I graduated from. And then even through my first year of this this degree, there was only like 4 guys really in the sexology program, and only a few of us were gay. So I ended up being hired to start working on studies for gay men's health, and then I was on a pilot project for HIV testing and motivation interviewing. So it's been even in that detour in graphic design, in my Cégep, I decided to put together and create and coordinate like a LGBTQ association that is still running to this day. So that's exciting. So yeah, it took me a little while, but I always kind of knew. And then in Montreal, one summer, I started volunteering at a place called Maison Plein Coeur, and on my 3rd day of volunteering there, one employee kind of left, and they looked at me and they're like, "Do you want the job?" I was like, "Okay." So I started working, and it was great. It was such a beautiful place to work. So when I moved to Toronto a few years later, it made sense that I would continue in mental health and in sexual health. And then I got my degree to become a registered psychotherapist.
It's such a fun way to get into where you wanted to go, because I feel like you took a detour, but the world was like, no, this is kind of where you have to be, and take the break. And as a graphic designer, I know it's so much fun, and I also know it's also like there's a lot of problem solving that happens in graphic design. Like it's a tough business. It's a tough program to be in, and they work you to the bones. So you actually did like one really tough program and then went into another tough program. And it's still, yeah.
They're fun skills to have, though. I really don't regret those 4 years. Like when it was time to start a podcast or create my website or anything in life, design my business cards. It was all really useful tools to have. So I guess I still have fun. And I see sometimes some of my colleagues struggling with putting their image out there as professional because they don't have those skills. So I regret nothing.
Well, I mean, now we will definitely talk about mental health much because that's the podcast you have on Spotify. But I'll save it towards the end because I want people to relish on that. But did you create the logo for that as well?
No, the logo for that, which is amazing, was gifted to me as a Christmas gift just last Christmas. I had been talking about starting a podcast with the two people that have been in my COVID bubble. And for Christmas, we decided to make ourselves homemade gifts. And so my friend designed to me the logo of Mental Health Much with all the little monsters. And I was like, well, I guess now I have to start. I have to do it. So I just bought a microphone and started my journey into podcasting.
That's fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about it because I feel like it's too exciting and we don't have to save it to the end. So you've been thinking about this podcast for a year, you said?
So early COVID, I was tasked where I work to create videos and create content on YouTube because we didn't know I'm a group coordinator and groups were really not sexy. Like in March 2020, we could not do groups and it took me a while to adjust to deliver programs online. Okay. So in the meantime, when we thought that flattening the curve would take like 3 weeks, remember that time?
Who were those people? I remember that time. Yeah.
So to occupy myself during those 3 to 5 weeks to flatten the curve, I told my boss, why don't I just put content on YouTube? I was creating this program for people who are supporting loved ones who are using crystal meth. So I thought this could be great to have on YouTube. So I created those. And then I realized that creating content and editing is something I love. So that was the beginning of a new passion. But for myself, a YouTube channel was just not really what I wanted because I want the conversation more than I wanted to just be alone in front of my camera.
Right.
So podcasts felt nicer.
No, so like, I feel like we went through a very similar journey at the same time and then you decided to podcast and I decided to videocast. Because for me, like a conversation in person, looking at somebody is so much more important. And as a visual artist, like the visual part is really key. But I love it. So one of my questions that's so funny is, so I'm going to ask you, how do you tell? So I recently received a letter from my sister. So I'm a crystal meth user who's been sort of in and out of recovery, trying to figure out where I want to end up. And the one thing I've struggled with so much is that my sister's brilliant. She is smart. She reads up on everything. She goes to all her friends who are doctors, nurses, and be like, here's a problem. How do we solve it? And it's so textbook with these guys. And I'm like, I try to be like, I'm living in it. And here's what I'm like, yes, you read this, but I promise you, this is where my life is. And I'm not lying to you. I'm not like all the stigma attached around addicts. Really, like, I feel like I'm always fighting with that. So what's the one thing that you would tell a loved one about the addict in their life? And maybe not one thing, but something you could tell a loved one about the addict in their life that may help.
I mean, there's so much there, and there's so much in what your sister is trying to do. I think the first place where I want to go is just to remind people that regardless who you are, your job is never to fix someone else, and that mental health and addiction problems they're not like a math problem. There's not like a sequence of event that needs to happen to resolve it.
Yeah.
So offering support instead of offering help is what I tend to say to people, and the nuance can be, and obviously English is my second language, so maybe I'm wrong, but walking with someone instead of like dragging someone with you. And there's no one size fits all solutions. And the solutions may not look or feel like they thought it would look or feel. I say that to almost all my new clients as a psychotherapist. I'm like, you will notice changes, but it probably won't be the changes that you think will happen in your life, because that's just not how psychotherapy works.
Right. Thank you for that, because that's such a great, like, it's so one with the like wherever you are in your journey, it's nuanced. And two, you're right. Like I think your family members have such an idea of what they want you to look like, well, who they want you to look like, and where they want you to be. And I mean, I wish that was the reality of when you're in the process. It's really not, right? I think like the idea that one day at a time is really one day at a time for some of us. Uh,
Yeah.
and even at our best, some days it's still one day at a time. Yeah.
And it's so weird. Not the weird, but so you've experienced a problem with addiction.
Right.
You know about addiction. It's your real life. You're in it in the moment. And then I want to support you. And suddenly I read a book or a blog that gives me on paper like things to consider to help. And I'm like, oh, I read this recipe on how to help. And then I, as I'm the user, receives that. And I'm like, do you think I did not try that? Like, do you think I did not I don't know, like the typical things are like, find yourself another reward, find yourself a support system, get an app on your phone to remind you not to use. People who are in addiction or in mental health, they've tried tons of things before. It's not like people are not stupid. They've tried harm reduction, they've tried things. And just because you're new and you're getting information for the first time, you know, it's human nature. I've been working with people with addiction for so long, and sometimes I still want to go back to like, what about going to the gym? Maybe that could help you being more active and heal your depression, which is not a bad advice, but
Right.
like, not that simple.
Yeah, I think you hit it. It's not that simple. And also, I think depending on where you are, right? Like, I think like going to the gym maybe at the very like after you've used for a weekend, it's not the best idea because your body just needs to recover. And then yes, maybe 6 months out when your body feels amazing or you feel like you're in a better headspace, then going to the gym to maintain that, no problem. Yeah, you like yeah, I think about that all the time. Like, there's so many tools out there. There's so many different ways of attacking to the right and to get to wherever you want to get. And some work, some don't work, and it's also timing, right?
Yeah.
Like I love my sister. I think she's fantastic. The fact that we have these conversations, I think, are amazing already. And she'll send me again because she's such a book nerd. She'll send me books. She's like, "Oh, I read this. Like, my body remembers. The body remembers." And like addictions books that she's read with local people. And I'm like, "Oh, these are great." But you read at a speed that you could finish a book a week. It's going to take me 3 months.
Right.
Even if I have an audiobook, it's going to take me 3 months to get there. Because it's like, there's still other things that I do within my daily life to like just make sure that I feel normal and like I feel at a baseline to function properly some days, right? So, yeah.
And like, obviously, I think tools are great. I'm not saying don't give people tools, but sometimes in therapy, my brain is like, oh, this person is suffering. I'm going to give them some tools. And when my brain tells me this, I've trained myself to say, this is probably the opposite of what this person needs right now.
Ooh.
So instead of giving more solutions, I slow down and I tell the person like, it feels like you're stuck right now, or this is really hard right now. And then we can talk about their feeling in the moment of being stuck or feeling like they failed or feeling like nothing they've tried is working. And that's much more powerful for me than just shoving a ton of tools down their throat that they're probably not even in a space that they're able to hear it. Because that's the other thing to remember. Often I say something, and often people in recovery, they have a lot of different therapists, or they go to AA, they have different tools. And then sometimes I hear someone that I work with and they're like, oh, my therapist last week said this and this and that, and it was amazing. And in primary, I'm like, I've told you that like 2 years ago.
Right.
But if the person in front of me is not at a place where they're ready to understand or capable of understanding, or just, in an hour of therapy, there's just a lot of things that happen.
Right.
I don't remember everything that happens in my hour of therapy. So I need to not think that my clients do.
That's fair. Like I think even at my best days, I can't consume all that information. So like yeah. And I'm always joking about like Chris and Alex love to talk, and so we like to talk, because I think we have just so many feelings and things that maybe we can just express out. So I 100% usually think that people are tuning me out halfway through a conversation if I'm not pointed and specific. I mean, I also come from a marketing background, so like getting to the headline quickly is important in what I've been taught. But when I'm in my feelings mode, it just takes me forever to get there. So I completely understand that. Um, so that's actually really great advice. I think like something I can take back to my sister and sort of say, hey, like here's I'm just gonna make a listen to the podcast because I might as well get a viewership on there. But I think those are really key things for family members to know. One, like you're not there to solve the problem. You're there to walk with the person as opposed to uh, support them, right? Your support needs to look differently than I think maybe they've imagined, and maybe it's a conversation we have to have a few times as
Yeah.
addict to family, and be like, hey, like this is, and to be like, this is what I need from you right now, and when those changes, reiterate those changes when they come up, if they come up, yeah.
And there's this meme that's been going on for like the past 6 months, maybe. And I love memes. I feel like memes
Yeah.
contain the whole world. Um, that says something like, oh, my partner and I, this year, we've learned to ask, do you want advice right now? Or do you want just to vent?
Right.
And I
Ooh.
think this is something that people need to learn also.
Right.
Do you want me to just sit with the fact that you're angry because you relapse and you're sad,
Mm.
and we're just going to drink water and,
Yeah.
be sad? Uh, or do you want me to talk about your plan moving forward? There's a time for both. They're both really important, but skipping the first one is not helpful. If the person needs to process their emotions, if you
Right.
go directly to, let's be positive, let's make a plan, let's plan your next few days,
Yeah.
you're kind of losing the person a little bit.
Oh my god, again, brilliant, because I feel like in my early relapses, I had moved in with a cousin, and I remember having used for a weekend. I went over to her, like went back home because I was living with her, and I wasn't in a state to talk. So I just slept on the couch, and then she just slept next to me, and just having that for an hour was the best. I mean, we call it cuddle bum because it was just like, and she said that's what her dog does to her when her dog is sad, and I was like, you're right. There's a moment when that happens and you need that. And actually, Raheem's really good at that. When he's like thinks you're feeling sad, he'll just come and hug you. And you're right. Just having that moment of like, right now I can't process. Specifically, if I've just come out of a binge or a use, because my mind
Yeah.
and my body are still somewhere. And then I'm happy to have a conversation with you after. But in that moment, you're right. It's a it's a good thing for your support system to know. Yeah.
And sometimes for the support system, sometimes there's just no help. Like sometimes there's nothing that you can say or do that is the right thing to say or do.
Right.
I find myself there sometimes. I find sometimes just like, oh, this person is going through it again, and I'm sad for them, and I wish I could help them. And right now, I don't have something to help them, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that's okay that sometimes I don't have everything.
Yeah. I think you're right. Sometimes it's okay. Like I think as a family member, also, I'm sure they take on like sometimes as a family, your friends, they like your job is to support each other and be with each other. And I think we just, yeah, sometimes we just don't have it because we just don't, and that's okay as well because that makes it a human experience, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love how where this conversation is going. To be honest with you, I feel like I wasn't planning for it to go this way, but it's great. Like this was like COVID was the year. I feel like mental health surfaced like there was no tomorrow. I
Yeah.
mean, I think everything that was hidden underneath our politeness and like clouds of whatever just came up to the surface, which I love because now we get to deal with it. Two, it also makes me feel as crazy as I am. I'm like, oh, good, everybody has a little crazy in them.
Yeah.
And for a service provider, like I feel like you guys were like bombarded with like there was more people to be served than we had service providers. Let's just be honest, and it normally is within the LGBT community or any not for profit. What did you do during this time? What did you do during this time to take care of yourself? Like, what was what was your self care?
Oh my God. I mean, it was a year. It was a year for us too. Like personally, in my personal life, I had just reduced my hours where I worked to start a private practice. And I was finally hitting a place where I was working, and I lost almost all of my clients. Understandably, everybody thought they would, again, flatten the curve, but everybody thought they would come back in a few weeks when the curve would be flattened or something. It took a moment, even for me, to accept that online therapy worked. And I said that on the podcast that I'm on the thing that I'm with Rahim, and I fully admit that I was one of these people who were like, ugh, online therapy, that's not a thing. And I was proven very wrong, which is good. I love being proven wrong. I learn. So all this to say, the fact that the nature of my job puts me face to face with people who are vulnerable really helped me. Because I was not only having those surface conversations about COVID, I was right in there. I was right in there with their emotions, their fear, their feelings. And obviously I was feeling those things too, differently, but we were all in the same world. And I was very lucky to be able to start doing groups again. I remember that first group that I piloted online. I had amazing participants in it. And I told them at the end of the 8 weeks, and I was like, I know I was the support. I was doing the peer support.
Right.
Because it's not psychotherapy what I do. I'm not hired as a psychotherapist where I work. So it was more peer support. And I'm like, I know I'm supposed to be facilitating, but that really helped me go through those 2 months. So that's kind of how I did the self-care. And for me, it's super cliche, and we made joke about going to the gym, but being able to continue to move my body was just the most important. And I'm so happy that the weather is finally catching up and I can be on my bicycle again.
Oh my God, I agree to all that stuff. So I think some of the things that you hit was really interesting. One, this idea that, so I'm also going to like, for me, movement is so important. So dance and yoga are such a huge part of my recovery, and how it's a tool that I wasn't taught in recovery. It's what I have and I use a lot. And the movement again, I think during the pandemic was so important for people. And two, this idea of like, whatever you're putting out there is actually supporting you. So, I mean, you know about the program I recently put out there. It's a dance and yoga program for PNP users. And it was really inspired because I think I was like, oh, this works for me. I don't see it anywhere else. And as much as I am doing it for other people, it's really actually for me as well. Like, I feel like making myself show up at the space, making myself see other peers, making sure that I am at my best when I'm doing it is really helping me stay clean or helping me stay in the space I want to stay, right? So it's funny how when you're putting stuff else to help out people, you really are there's such a building community and working with community is such a it's a thing that goes both ways, which is fantastic to hear.
Yeah, and obviously as a therapist, I'm not a robot and I'm not a mirror. I know the early therapy, like Freud, was very you need to be only a mirror and not bring anything of your own self, which a lot of people still think that way. It's less how I think. I think I'm a human, and the more human I am as a therapist, the better work I personally do.
Right.
But I could feel when clients were talking about something, I could feel in my brain getting my attention away from them, because I was like, oh my God, I feel this way also. I could take half a second to make a mental note of this and then go back to my client, for the rest of my hour. And then when the session's over, be like, oh, this is obviously something that triggered me, so I'm going to look at that and see how it influences my life.
Right. No, that's such of course you're not a robot. And I think we need to as service users, when I go to my therapist, I guess I do think he's a robot. Oh no, actually I don't think he's a robot. I don't, because I think specifically this time around I went to look for a gay therapist who works within the community, who understands addiction and relationships. I went very specific, because I was like, I need somebody as close to me as possible who understands what I'm talking about, so I don't have to dive into all of it, yet learn as much as I can out of this. So I think having you guys, having a peer, having somebody that almost reflects you as another human is nice to be in a room. And also when he says things like, oh my God, my heart's hurting when you say this. And I was like, oh, you have a heart. Yay, me too. My heart, my heart's hurting when I'm telling you this. So I love that you're telling me this as well.
It's very challenging to be a therapist and to be a peer worker in community where I am a part of.
Yeah.
And I hesitated a long time before starting a podcast. This is more about being a therapist, but with my podcast and even being on this show, I'm revealing some stuff about my personal self, and maybe clients or service users can now Google me and hear personal stuff about myself. And it was a very delicate line to walk. And obviously I'm registered. We have a professional college, which I think is really important. And those things are not super addressed in this. The rules are made mostly for if you live in a big town and you're straight, and you're not going to see your clients a lot. So it's all very tricky, but I thought it was important for myself as a therapist, but also as a queer person, to put myself out there. And although I'm respecting the rules of my college, I can still show that, therapists were not just machines that do therapy, where there's a person behind.
So one of my questions is like your gay life with your clients, like, it's like you have your work life and then there's your gay life. So I have never seen you at a bar or club or a bathhouse. So how, where would you go? Like, how do you make sure that you don't stay with your clients? I mean, I don't go to any of those places, obviously, but I mean, I'm in Winnipeg, you're in Toronto, but how do you make sure that you don't see clients when you're when you're out on the street? How do you navigate that fine line? Like, I can't imagine you stop going to those places. Oh yeah, answer that.
This is a very interesting topic, and there's no good answer. And we talk about it all the time. Like as people who worked in the community, we talk about it all the time because we don't know where the line is. Yeah. The line is a little bit everywhere. My tool is that every time I start working with someone, I tell them, by the way, I exist outside of these four walls, and we might cross path with each other in the future. And although this might be awkward for you, I've been doing this job for 15 years, so it's not awkward for me. I find Toronto a lot easier than Montreal because it's so much bigger. Right. And I'm a little bit older too, so I don't go to bars as frequently as when I was, 24, 25. But my first ever job, I was doing HIV testing and testing motivational interviewing, and I was still a bartender to pay for rent. And I remember this one very early on, I did HIV testing with this person who had a lot of anxiety about HIV. And then we talked for an hour, calmed him down, went home. That same night, or maybe the next day, he came and he bought a beer from me, and he was like, wait, are you the same person? And I was like, oh, this is gonna happen for the rest of my life, probably. Right. So I'm pretty used to it by now. There are certain places where I won't go, just to make things easier for everyone. Like places that are purely sexual, like the back room of a bar, bathhouse, certain areas of parks, I will just not go. It's not a huge sacrifice for me. These are not things that I necessarily love all that much personally. Okay. If I was someone who really liked that, this would maybe be a harder, and I know that some of my colleagues love those places and they have to have a hard conversation with themselves. And it's a personal journey.
I love that you said that. Yeah, you're right. It has to be something that you love and you like, and then I guess you just have to again, it's nuanced no matter what, and you just have to have the conversation with yourself, or I guess more with yourself, because once you get out to public, you don't want to out the other person, or you don't want, there's got to be a difference there.
I always tell everyone that if they see me out in the street or everywhere, I will ignore them until they come and say hi to me. That way it's kind of the baseline. And I explain to them that if I'm with friends or family, my friends and family, they know what I do for a living. So if they tell me they know me from work, it's a little bit of a disclosure. Right. But people are allowed to tell their friends that I'm their therapist. It's me that's not allowed to do the opposite.
Right. I guess that's true, right? Yeah, it completely makes sense, because then you can't disclose the information basically at the end of the day. Yeah. One of the things else, as well as you brought up on that panel that you were with Raheem, was this idea that you guys are always looking for people to engage in this community. There's apparently a low number of I guess, peer workers or people working specifically with the LGBT community in trauma, sexuality, addiction, which are all very heavy places to be. So can you expand on that a bit more?
There, yeah, there's just not
Yeah.
that much. Which, there are great therapists that are not my therapist. She's not a gay man, and she's a great therapist. But there's not a lot. And then there are also a lot of gay queer therapists that, because of what we were just talking about, prefer to not work in the community.
Right.
And that makes a lot of sense. If I'm being super honest with you, with the whole COVID and online therapy right now, the back of my head has been spinning about how could I maybe develop a clientele over Ontario that maybe does not live necessarily in Toronto, so that we can keep working together online, but they don't have to see me. And my being bilingual and speaking French, there are French regions of Ontario where people could find me, and now I'm able to work with these people online because the distance is no longer a thing. So I'm hoping that some good will have come out of the year that we've had in that realm. I feel like I'm not answering your question at all because I went on a tangent, but
no, I mean, I think the question was like there isn't enough support, and you answered why there isn't enough support and what people pick. But I love so like in the pandemic, when I think it's such you're, as much as you're not a graphic designer, the problem solving is in your head. You're just creating, you're finding ways to problem solve something that doesn't work for you. You're creating new ones, and I think your therapy and this idea of trying to reach to Ontarians who are outside of Toronto but still bilingual is actually a very smart way of still living your life in your downtown core gay Toronto, and then not having as much of there's less opportunity for you to run into those people.
Yeah. And
smart.
Again, I said I was wrong to think that online therapy does not work as well as face-to-face therapy. I think there's a value. There are people who are not safe at home. They don't have a safe space. They want to talk about marriage problems or partnering problem, and they live with their partner. That makes it really challenging, to do online therapy. But for a lot of people, it's possible. So I think there are some solutions. But yeah, generally speaking, there's just such a lack of queer therapists for many reasons too. And the reality too is most of the queer therapists that I know, they're all white.
Yes.
So that's also a thing. If you listen to this and you're a queer person of color, non-conforming, non-binary, I don't know, but just not a white cis man, and you're hesitating, your journey might be difficult to get a job sometimes, but it's so needed, and hang in there. And I don't know, contact me. I will help you to get a career, but know that it's going to be difficult, and your personal and professional life is going to be a bit mixed up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the offer, and thank you for letting people know that. I think, as I said, I was looking for a very specific psychotherapist earlier in life, right? And I was like, I also wanted them to be brown, but I'm friends with all those guys, so I couldn't, I don't want those guys, I don't want them in my therapy session, they're my friends. I'm trying to be very clear about my life already crosses over in so many ways that I just I want to go talk to one person all the shit I want to, and they don't know any of my friends, and they can't be one of my friends. But you're right, there's such a lack of queer people of color therapists out there, let alone gay specific, who are queer, who identify a very specific way. This online, so one of the great things that came out the pandemic for me there's two great things. One was just the idea that everything came online. I remember so I'm, again, graphic designers, we've been online forever. Our solutions are online. I've been working online and doing Zoom meetings and that for over 10 years now. Right. But I was also in the medical field, always took forever to get there. There was such a resistance on getting there. Not just a resistance on getting there, but a resistance on connecting all the modalities so that they're all talking to each other. So everyone has a same place for information. And it took the pandemic to make this happen within weeks. And now that's our new norm. But it took over 10 years to get here. I'd be like, go talk to my doctor who knows my psychotherapist, who knows my doctor at CAMH, but they're not connected on the same platform, so they can't talk to each other. And again, within 2 weeks, this happened across the board in the medical field. What was the, I guess for you, I mean, you could talk specifically personally to you. What was the hard, like, what made you think that this was going to be challenging, or this was not going to work? Why did you think online was not going to work?
Um, I don't know. It was just my gut feeling, and I guess I was wrong. Sometimes we made decisions and we think things, and it's not based on facts. It's just based on emotions. One thing that I'm sad about is that I know, and I think that's not just for me, but the going into a space to do therapy and then getting back home, that I would always walk or bike depending on how far it was. And
Right.
that moment post therapy
Mhm.
of walking home with my own feelings of what just happened in therapy was almost as beneficial as the hour in therapy itself.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, this is something that was lost, because now you log out Zoom and you're back into your life. You have emails. Like I do sometimes have, like regularly, a lot of people, they're talking with me online and it's with their same work computer. So they have the emails that pings in the bottom of their screen, and their phone
Yeah.
like rings and stuff like that. So this is lost a little bit, but it's clearly not as bad or impossible as I thought. I thought we would lose that in-person feel, that I would have a hard time reading people's nonverbals and emotions.
Right.
Um, and it's not. I guess the only thing that I've lost is I have a pad for like art therapy where sometimes people would draw stuff.
Yeah.
And this is a little bit harder to do online, because I'm
Right.
like, go get a pen and like draw me your pain. Um, it
Yeah, I love that. Oh my god, I'm gonna like draw me a pain sounds like a great new workshop to do.
yeah.
There you
Yeah.
go. You've created a new workshop called Draw Me a Pain. I think Vincent, you need to get that out there in the world. Yeah, I guess yeah, that does like losing that hour. Like I remember when I went from 9 to 5 to freelancing and do my own business. You right, it's so when you work somewhere else, it's a very set routine, and some of the like taking a subway really helps because you're reading a book or you're
Yeah.
biking outdoors, and the pandemic really did take that away. And I think at some points also because we weren't allowed to meet other people, um, that restricted that. But I guess I don't know for you, but for me, it forced me to be like, okay, every day I must go for a walk. Like I have to be committed no matter what the weather is like, is to take my lunch break and go for a walk. Because if I don't do that, then I haven't left the house and I haven't processed some of the things that I would do on a walk. Or in my very early relapse, in my very early recovery, when I lived with my cousin, we used to get up early in the morning, go for a run and have breakfast, or go for a walk and have breakfast because we walked her dog. And that, like, when I moved out of my own place, I missed that. And I was like, oh my God, like those moments sometimes, um, maybe we don't pay attention to them, but really define how we keep ourselves sane. Yeah.
Yeah. I know for me, um, if I'm not able to go outside first thing in the morning, so if I go directly from my bed to in front of this computer,
Right.
my headaches are bad. I have low energy. I feel gross all day. And even in the morning, sometimes I don't have a lot of time, but just putting myself out for 15 minutes before I sit on that chair,
Yeah.
really, I know some mornings I just don't have the time to do it. Or I'm thinking, oh, let's just be like a quick like 30 minutes meeting and I can go for a walk after. It's not the same. It's
No.
not the same as going outside first thing in the morning.
Right. No, agreed. I think, and we really have to get ourselves disciplined to be able to do that, right? It's such a discipline to work on. Yeah. We're down to 2 minutes, and I feel like we haven't talked much about. I know it's always so quick about mental health much. So, what can our viewers expect to hear? Like, what is your mission from with mental health much?
Mostly I just wanted to talk about mental health. And so I invite friends and colleagues over, and they pick a topic. I don't pick a topic. They choose what they want to talk about, and we talk about it for the entire time. Um, And I think that everything can be mental health. So, there are some topics that are very more obvious, like loneliness, but one of my episodes that's not published yet is about how someone became a circus artist and how that really helped him and his mental health. So I'm like, you want to talk about circus and performing art? This is related to mental health. We can do that. So really a lot of topic with a lot of amazing people. Some are queer, some are not. I like to be able to promote queer voices more and more out in the world. But if my guest is not queer, I'm queer enough for the both of us that the show is still gay.
I love that. So
yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and some of my episodes are in French because obviously that's important to me, and that's it.
what a great introduction to that. I think it's such a great way of talking about it. And like, you're right. I think everything can end up in mental health. And like we were saying earlier, everything, it takes many tools. You need many tools. Some things are nuanced. You need and I think you're kind of proving that with your podcast, that one solution does not fit all when it comes to mental health. Yeah, that's fantastic. So it's going to buzz in a second.
We're done.
We've got one more minute. We're going to wrap up the 5 minutes. But people, it's Mental Health Much is going to be is on Spotify. Anywhere else?
Anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Oh, great, perfect. I mean, I'll definitely
Mental
put a link.
Health Much with a question mark that I think I did wrong because my image is mirrored.
Okay, well, I will look at it and maybe let you know. I did, but I'll make sure to put those in the links. I think it'd be fun to follow. I think all my any French listeners out there, Vincent's fantastic. And who doesn't want to hear a man talk in an accent talk about mental health? It makes it feel so much better. So, all right. So Vincent, for our last minute, we are going to do a rapid fire question. So one word at you, and then you respond back with your connection to it, or whatever word comes to your mind with it. Ready?
Would I answer with just one word too?
Yeah, just one word too.
Okay.
One word is all. Yeah. I mean, yeah. That's the goal. Let's see how you do.
It's so stressful. Okay.
It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun.
Okay.
Whatever the first word comes to your mind. All right. Montreal.
Oh my God. Island. So boring.
Gay men.
Oh my God. This is just health. Is the word. I've said gay men health so many times in my life that if you say gay men, I think health right away.
Okay. Mental health. I guess that's 2 words.
Yeah. Everywhere.
COVID-19.
Done.
Community.
I'm sitting between beautiful and challenging.
But I feel like for this we can have them both. 2022.
Like in the year? Oh,
Yeah.
I can't project that far.
Oh, wow. You really are one day at a time.
Yeah.
Well, Vincent, thank you very much for taking time out of your busy day to have this conversation with me. I want to thank our audience out there for doing the same. And I look forward to speaking to you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Ciao. Bye, everyone.
Bye.